Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Moonbow Network episode 3. And I'm joined by the wonderful, the awesome Azreal Shade. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. I don't know if I'm all those things, but maybe we'll see in the future when I
I think you are
eventually.
those things, and I am correct. So,
Okay.
today, as the title suggested, we're going to be doing a lot of speculating here. None of this is confirmed in any capacity. We're just talking about stuff that we want in the game, basically.
Yep.
There's a few things that I wanted to go over. So there will be some structure to this specific podcast, but in general, because this topic is pretty freeform, I just want us to have generic conversation.
Yep.
For those of you who aren't aware, my name is Danarite. Excuse me. I was a FGC streamer for a long time. Got paid to do commentary for Soul Calibur 6 around the world, Poland and France, especially the UK where I live. But now I'm like heavily into Mecha. So Mecha Break is something that I'm hugely looking forward to. And I recently, 2 days ago, got a beta box for the Gundam TCG. We did an opening on the stream last night. It's a lot of fun and I can't wait. So before we get into the conversation, just tell them a bit about yourself, Azrael.
Hi. I'm Azreal. I also like Mecha. I've liked it since I was in early high school when my dad randomly brought me a red Astray uh, mass-produced Gundam model kit. I wasn't aware of Gundam at the time. I eventually got into it while watching Unicorn and uh, Double O and stuff like that, and I've just really enjoyed Mecha since then.
Sweet.
Uh,
What's
yeah,
like your favorite mecha franchise, would you say?
franchise. That's
Yeah.
kind of tough because I also I really love Armored Core. I played first gen like I think a week before six was announced.
Wow.
So that was a funny little string of events. Um, I loved PS1 Armored Core. I still do. Before that, I played DXM. A good friend of mine uh, gifted DXM to me, and I kind of just got like introduced into the Armored Core-esque genre through there. And then I played one Project Phantasma and Master of
Mm.
Arena, and two. I love two as well. Need to finish the rest. I finished six. I enjoy that. I have some gripes with it too, but ultimately I love Armored Core. I also played Gundam Evolution, RAP,
Rest in
uh,
peace. Yeah.
screw Bandai. Um, let's see what else was there. I used to be a pretty decent Mirage player in Transformers 3, the game.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
that'll be relevant for the discussion later. But yeah, I just
Interesting.
really love mecha. I really love mecha anime. My favorite mecha anime would be 86, even though by comparison the mechas in question are pretty small.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, I love
Um,
sci-fi, love fantasy, love mecha.
all that good stuff. I mean, when it comes to mecha, I've said this on the other two, and people generally know this that mecha is unfortunately such a niche genre, which is crazy to me because like who doesn't want to watch people in massive mech suits fighting each other? Just seems insane. But you know what? Hopefully the genre is growing. Like I said, we've got Mecha Breaks coming out in spring. We've
Spring.
got the Gundam TCG coming out in February. It's the beta version. We've also got like the tabletop kind of RTS thing. I think is coming out now with Gundam. Oh god, I actually can't remember the name of it now. But yeah, you get these little figures, and it's a tabletop game.
Yeah.
And we're also getting a new Gundam anime, GQs. Unfortunately, no sign of Armored Core 6 DLC, but maybe Armored Core 7. I think Miyazaki
Maybe.
said that he wanted to do like one more Souls like, and then that'll be it. But
I
hopefully,
think sorry to
Hopefully
cut you
not.
off. I think
No, it's fine. Hopefully
DXM,
not.
I think DXM2 is also like in the works right now.
Yeah, Demon X Machina. Uh, did they? In September
I
2021,
think they,
confirmed the sequel was in the works. Oh, okay. So it's been in production for a while because it was announced in 2021. Okay, interesting.
yeah,
Okay, no. So yeah, the mecha genre can be pretty big, especially when you encapsulate yourself within the community. But in the grand scheme of things, it's unfortunately not as mainstream as we would like it to be. However,
yeah, and that's it. It's unfortunate.
yeah. However, we are talking about Mecha Break today. Today is going to be all about Mecha Break and what we want from the game, essentially. So I'll let you start off, Azrael. What do you want to start the conversation off with?
Hmm. I think I want to talk about like the strikers just to, strike that off. Um, fun.
Sure.
Uh, yeah, the roster right now is pretty nice, and then we basically got confirmation with that Mashmak trailer that we're getting like alternative like weaponry for the strikers, so that'll be interesting.
Hmm.
So we also have to consider what types of strikers could potentially be added to the game beyond the existing roster as well. I remember like I think 9 months back there was a closed beta before the most recent one and before the open beta. There there's like one video of it I found and it's like it's very elusive. You can see this one striker that is a light stealth melee striker with dual swords, I believe. Uh,
Yes.
the community has like dubbed it with like one of two names, either Hiei or Umbra. I will be opting to call it Hiei because that just kind of fits with the current naming conventions that exist within
Yeah.
Mecha Break because there's nothing that really matches Umbra out of the existing roster. Uh, I really hope they add Hiei and flesh it out. Just get it ready. Maybe not like at launch, but at some point in the game,
Hmm.
because that stealth melee playstyle is something I've been living for. I loved playing Mirage in Transformers 3, and there's nothing that's quite felt the same as that since then. So I'm hoping Hiei fills that void.
Hmm. Yeah. When I saw the Hiei footage, which I got caught completely off guard. Just somebody in the Discord was like, "Have you seen this footage? It's not from like an NDA beta or something." So I'll post it just in the general chat. um,
Yeah,
and it was like, why wasn't this in the open beta? What's wrong with this character that you don't want to show it to us now? You need to wait until we actually get a hold of the game in a later open beta or even in the release window. Um, like you say, it's such a cool design because we've got the heavy striker with Welkin, we've got medium melee striker with Panther, and what I was saying for the longest time was that we need like a light dual wielding melee mecha that has some kind of maneuverability option. And then I found out about Hiei slash Umbra, and I was like, that's what I wanted. He's got cloak, he's light, fast movement, really good melee combos. I'm sold. I need it right now.
ex- exactly. It's just from the silhouette alone, it's a very beautiful looking striker as well.
Hmm.
It looks kind of reminiscent of like Bile from
Oh, I am
IBO.
blooded. Yeah, I am blooded orphans. Yeah.
Yeah. And even then
Except,
from the beta test footage of it, like I don't think it would be overpowered, so maybe they just weren't satisfied with its movement, or maybe it was overpowered. I didn't get to play it, right? So
mm,
I wouldn't know. But I feel like it would have fit in with within the roster just fine
yeah, I
because we
agree.
don't really have anything that fills its spot right now. The
No.
only light melee we have is like Elysinus being broken out of its armor, and that's not quite a fully fleshed out kit
Yeah, it's intentionally a reduced kit from his base form because he's a medium striker. I,
Yeah,
because when I was playing at least this, I thought it would be really cool if his light mode was the character because it seems like it would fit what I wanted. And then I played a bit of Falcon, and I thought if only this mech had a melee option, that would be so sick.
yeah.
And they seem to have fulfilled that promise, at least from the footage that we've seen. But like you say, it might have been overpowered in testing, and they wanted to make sure that people weren't too salty if it came out for one of the betas, which is
For sure.
understandable. So, like I say, hopefully we get it sooner rather than later. Not just make or break the game, but everything else that comes with it, so that we can all finally start engaging with it without any NDAs and speculation stuff.
Yeah. I'm wondering what other kind of strikers they could potentially add. We have like two like different fields of snipers. Like we've got the aerial movement sniper with Aquila. We've got the stealth sniper with Narukami. One's more consistent, one's more burst. I think that's like a pretty good choice between the two. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
there's anything to fill in that slot. I think the ultra heavies that we've got on hand right now are they serve their own niche, even if they maybe potentially need to be brought up a little. I've been seeing people say that they get decimated in higher elo lobbies, uh, which I understand because then Pinaka just like gives them the hammer of God with the walls.
The walls were such a silly idea. Like, it's great to be Pinaka, shield yourself, and then just get close to somebody and drop three walls on them and immediately murdered.
Yeah, yeah. Just immediately sent to hell with like three walls if you're caught lacking.
It's insane. I think people probably said that Tricera and Stego were getting ground to dust in higher elos because as much as they're easy to play, I think they're generally quite hard in terms of their skill ceiling. The skill floor is quite low, but the skill
Yeah,
ceiling is also quite high because they don't have much variety in the way that they play. They're very much a we need to sit here or only have slight maneuverability because what we want to do is deal the most damage, and then in order to offset that amount of damage, you have to be heavy and tanky. So I think it's fine. It's just having to work around that kind of comp if you have a Tricera and or Stego to make sure that the rest of your team works with that rather than just kind of relying on them to hold a point or continue pushing the payload without any support. So hopefully we start to see a bit more balancing around whole team comps rather than just being like, oh, you picked Stego and Tricera, it's an auto lose, or you picked Panther, it's an auto win. I think there's a lot of
yeah,
opportunity to balance around team compositions rather than individual strikers.
for sure, for sure. The the ultra heavies, their weaknesses are very like apparent compared to the other cast members. Like I think they have like a problem with their turn speed in the stationary mode. I think they also can't look up all the way in their
Uh,
stationary mode, so they just
you
get
might be right.
absolute. They get absolutely bird pooped on by falcons. It's sad.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
think I think
I'm
that's
wondering what.
it's tough, right? Because that's part of the weakness aspect of a mech like Tricera or Stego. If you're
Yeah,
aiming a Falcon or a Sky Raider half or an entire map away, you're able to clock them because you don't have to move your targeting up too far. But then if you've got a Falcon who's like right above you as they come flying past, dropping rocket pods at you, I think that's a reasonable weakness to have. It's just then how does like what's the matchup between those two, right? Like how does a Tricera beat a Falcon if the Falcon is good at maneuvering? Because if the Falcon's good at maneuvering, then the matchup's really shit. But
yeah,
generally, is the matchup good? Honestly, I don't really know because there's too much. There are too many variables in terms of how fast a specific mech can go, how well a player is able to barrel roll out of a target lock, and what other team comp is going to stop you from moving. Like if the Tricera had an Aquila in the background just waiting to stun you, is that gonna that's gonna affect the matchup as well? So I'm looking at it in a very fighting games kind of space, uh, a fighting games type of scope, just because I
Yeah,
feel like that's a very like it's a good base to start with. What are the matchups
it's
between
appropriate.
these? Yeah, and then how do you build a party composition around that?
Yeah, because I'd rather not have them go the For Honor route where so many characters just feel like damn near the same. Oh, hey, let's rework this character so they have all the same 50/50s everybody else has.
Yeah, For
Now
Honor
it
is an
feels like
interesting case
everybody
study.
else. Yeah. So having those apparent weaknesses help make them stand out, but having to balance around those weaknesses is also a really tough sort of assignment.
Oh yeah,
That's
I
why
don't
adding new
envy
strikers
balanced
is
teams.
also hard.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
no. Surprised Marvel Rivals is doing as well as it does. Sure, there's like the standout like broke characters, but like for the most part, it's pretty even, I feel.
Yeah, I think when we talk about getting to high elos and certain characters not being viable, um, you know, not to harp on about Marvel Rivals because I think we've talked about it in the past two podcasts, but it's very relevant right
Yeah,
now.
it's
In the
relevant. Yeah.
yeah, like Wolverine is still considered a pretty bad character outside of his actual job, which is tank busting.
Yeah.
But if you're able to have a really good Wolverine who doesn't just expect to be invincible, but has really good maneuverability with his like 3 second cooldown dash, his survivability perk where he takes 50% less damage and blah 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 blah. Then you can really dominate a team who's not ready for a good Wolverine. So how do you balance around that? Do you balance around the fact that one or two people will dominate a game, or do you just say, you know what, if this person's really good at this character, there's not much we can do about it because it's not our fault. This person's just really, really good.
Yeah. It's just there has to be a fine balance of can I do actually nothing because this character is too good against the matchup, or is it just like there always has to be that fine balance of the character should matter, but also the skill should matter, right?
Yeah.
Like I think um I think the Narukami and Falcon matchup is really interesting. I thought it would be very one-sided with the Falcon having radar, but I've seen discussion in the Discord where like people tend to say it's pretty even between the two because Narukami can just aim, right?
Yeah.
And then Falcon can just like rain hell, right? So I think having matchups like that are like really interesting. It also creates like rivalries between those like sects of players, and I think that would be both interesting and healthy for the game to have more matchups like that because it's interesting to talk about, right? Creates a whole Dante Virgil like aspect.
Yeah.
I would love to see more matchups like that.
It's I would say that's probably like the hardest part of keeping a competitive live service game alive because if you end up balancing around matchups like that too much, then you create a counter pick meta where if somebody
Hmm.
is this mech, then you should have spawned in with this particular mech because otherwise now you're just boned. So I think you still have to make every striker viable because then at least everybody can have fun as well as be able to do their job as well as they need to help a team win a game. Like I say, I don't envy balanced teams on any of these competitive games because like you will never get it 100% right. People will still downplay or upplay
Yeah.
characters. People will still get salty at specific matchup interactions, and there's not much you can do about that. So yeah,
Uh, Speaking of matchups, I think part of that also involves like maps and modes in a way. Like I think Eye of Mizra is miserable whenever you're fighting like hell, just one or even like God forbid two snipers on the enemy team on that map, it is terrible
Yeah.
because there's so much open space, and then there's just that period of time in the match where everybody's FCS is screwed. So many strikers are just like completely screwed over. God forbid you're Illuminate, and the only way you can heal is through like your wings.
I honestly think the Eye of Mizra event, I guess you'd call it, where everybody's
Hmm. I think it's
targeting
ECS
systems go
Storm.
ECS, yeah. Just get rid of it. It doesn't need to happen. Keep
Yeah,
that those kind of event things, like game altering things for Mashmak. And
yeah,
again, I hate to bring up Marvel Rivals, but the fact that you can change the environment quite dramatically, it can have an effect on an enemy team's ability to push you if you drop it right. But it's a
mm,
momentary change, and then your team can adapt around it. But in Mecha Break, I have Mizra, you're stuck like that for what feels like forever. And if you've got somebody rushing to the point to get the um get the key to the tower for the win, it's really difficult to stop them because not only are you having to chase this striker down, but you can't target anything. You're just
yeah.
having
It's
to,
even
especially
worse
if you're
when
Panther. Like, oh god, Panther
yeah, you gotta
charging that
manual
fucking
aim that shit.
lance. Oh, it was so horrible. Like, yeah, it felt good when I was able to manually aim the charged lance and hit somebody with it and kill them. But like, I'd rather that the game doesn't interfere with it to that degree, where I have to
Yeah.
hail mary Panther into another striker.
The weird part is that like your radar is completely open during that storm. I'd rather it be the other way around. I just say screw
Mm,
the radar, let us lock on. If you're gonna mess up with our lock on, at least like reduce the distance of the lock on. Don't take it away from us completely. Otherwise
yeah,
it just feels like shit.
that's very true. It does not feel good.
Yeah.
Uh, so kind of moving away from the matchup side of stuff, we could sit on matchups for an entire podcast, but I know you wanted to
Yeah.
talk about a few things specifically. So, in terms of builds and build variety, what are you kind of hoping for? Do you want a lot of build variety where you could turn Panther into like a heavy striker that has a bigger melee weapon and maybe a little pew pew to compensate, or do you want just a few small tweaks in terms of your main weapons, but you still keep the core of the striker and its identity?
I'd rather like preference-based customization because like making Panther heavy kind of I feel like that kind of messes with the identity of the strikers themselves in a way, because then there will be eventually there will be this problem where if it's like we can make this striker heavy or light, and then it's like you select that striker that's modified to be that way, and then you look the at like another striker that was like basically born that way, and it's like, well, why would I use this base striker if I can just use this modified striker that can do the job of this other striker better than that? You get what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'd rather them go like sort of the like Transformers route where you can change up like a couple like aspects like the weapons. I think it should be preference based where it's like do I want to go with like maybe sustained damage, maybe burst damage? Do I want to go ranged? Maybe have like a melee in my back pocket? Just very like preferential stuff. Because in Transformers 3, I loved running shotgun with Mirage, and I
Okay.
believe you had the choice between submachine gun and a sniper. I forget exactly what it was, but like one of those weapons was like between something and the sniper rifle, and I opted for the submachine gun because like having the shotgun with that like really strong backstab bonus was hella nice. Anyway, enough about Transformers 3. Um, but
It's
yeah,
fine.
I'd rather preferential based like customization because
Sure.
I'd rather have like an AC situation where it's just like meta build and top 10 mecha break meta builds for ranked grandmaster.
Yeah,
You
I
got to
think
run this specific loadout.
I, th- I think I think it's inevitable in that any competitive game that has customization will have a meta, because there'll be
Mm,
like an overall build, whether it be just be weapon loadout swaps or entire build, like head, chest, legs, whatever. There will be meta builds, especially depending on the game mode that you're going into. But I think I'm kind of in agreement with you in that it needs to be more preference based, but nothing that takes away from the identity of the striker itself. So we were having this conversation before.
yeah.
It might have even been the last time we did this podcast, where somebody had mentioned that in the trailer for it was a trailer for the new version of their Mashmak, and they saw that Panther had a little pew pew, a little pistol, a little laser pistol,
Yeah.
I think it was, or it might have even been an SMG.
I
And I
think they
just,
had like a gun. Yeah.
yeah,
Like
and
some
I
sort
just
of
thought to
like
myself,
auto.
I don't want this for Panther, because that's not what Panther's about. Like, you
Mm,
take away the ability, you you take away the, I guess you could see it as a
identity.
negative. Yeah, exactly. You take away the weakness, is the word I was looking for, in the fact that he doesn't have a ranged option, but then you give
Mm.
him a ranged option, and then it kind of completely has to change the identity of the mech, of the striker. So I'd rather it be minorly preference based, in terms of, oh, you can swap out the lance, which is heavy burst damage, for something like, I don't know, dual swords. That's more sustained damage. Or if you want to
Mm.
play a dot based melee striker, I don't know, maybe a kind of like a striking dagger that impales them from mid range, the same way that you can charge at somebody with the lance. Like, as long as
Mm.
everything stays within the confines of the archetype, I think that's fine. But changing too much means that you might as well have just not had archetypes in the first place and made everything customizable and made that the core of your game.
Absolutely. I think Aleseness having, I think it was like two guns. I think that at least fits with the versatility, like sort of like philosophy for Aleseness.
Mm.
But like when it comes to Panther, like melee is its identity. It's like does it really feel like a Panther anymore if it has a gun?
The answer is no. At least I would argue that the answer is no, for sure.
Like this is like it's like almost like I'm trying to think of like an example. It's like looking at Exia and taking away that GN sword, that very iconic GN sword, and giving him like just a basic ass beam rifle.
Yeah, well, he's got the beam sword, which is like his backup sword, but that's still
Yeah.
part of the melee identity, right? But like you say,
Yeah.
taking away the GN sword and then giving him any kind of ranged capability makes no sense, because not only is the melee archetype what you've put all that effort into,
Established.
yeah, established, but at the same time, you then have to compensate for the fact that Panther, specifically before the movement nerf, was supposed to be really good at movement. It was the reason why
Mm.
you could boost about 6 or 7 times in a row before you run out of energy. But then they reduced that capability, and it felt like, well, now I have to be a little bit more reserved with Panther, which in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. But then why give me a frontal shield and a 360 shield if I'm not able to just charge headfirst into these fights? I'm a medium striker. I've got a shield that's a 360 that protects against everything. I've got a frontal shield that I can have up at the same time as my lance. I want to be able to engage quickly and effectively. Now, whereas opposed to the new melee striker, which is called, what was it, Hiei or Umbra, it would make
Hmm.
way more sense to um, be able to move around the build of that to a much bigger degree, because its survivability is so minimal that you should be able to take the survivability and bump it up at least to a level similar to, say, Panther, just in terms of its health. But then you take away the ability to move around a lot because you're changing it dramatically. That would make more
Yeah.
sense. But that's I will forever it forever annoys me that they took away the ability of Panther to move around as quickly as he was after that nerf. I hope in this closed beta, because I'm actually not in it,
Mhm.
they've reverted that change and he's back to having his maneuverability again. And if they want to nerf something, then you nerf the damage of the lance, you nerf how much damage the shield takes. Yeah, that's essentially what you need to do to a melee striker to make them viable. I think.
Having played Panther to like plat 5-ish, I
Mm,
actually kind of disagree a little.
okay.
I I feel like the nerfs were justified in the sense that that motherfucker had like unlimited energy. That
Yeah.
like I feel like it made it to where Falcon was really screwed over in the sense. I feel like the dichotomy of speed between Panther and Falcon should be Falcon is great at sustained high speed, but Panther is just really great burst speed, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And that makes Panther kind of lean more into that sort of prowler and then striker play style because well, he has those reserves if he really needs to chase somebody down, especially something like Falcon. But at the same time, it's not so like it's not such an oppressive part of its kit that he's basically like it basically has Dark Souls 3 stamina.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody describe it like that, but that does make sense a bit more. Um,
It's like virtually no downside to like just redlining yourself because it's like I have 5 reserves and they recharge very quickly.
yeah.
Can't.
Well, that I think is the problem. Then is that well, actually, I think the main problem was the assault boost. So the fact that
Mm,
you were able to lock onto somebody quite far away, press the melee button, and just beeline straight to them with no downside. That should be nerfed.
mm,
But being able to maneuver as a melee only striker only makes sense. There should be a downside to the amount of damage that you can put out once you've reached your opponent, but the ability to reach your opponent is the point, especially if we're
yeah.
talking about a mech or a striker like Hiei, for example. It would be even weirder if Hiei wasn't able to do that as well because of it being presumably a light striker. And in the absence of having Hiei to play around with, Panther filled that role. And I think it would
Mm,
be fine if you nerf Panther after having Hiei release, but at the moment, it feels like an unnecessary nerf because people didn't know how to play around it. Um, but that again is a matchup thing, which we were talking about
yeah.
earlier. How do you stop a Panther from doing it? Well, honestly, it kind of feels like a Wolverine situation in Marvel Rivals. If you want to shut down a Wolverine, you have to make sure that you shut him down quickly and effectively. If a Panther is on their own, flying around, killing all of your supports and killing your tanks or whatever, then you stop them. You have to focus that mech because
Yeah.
that's what they do. That's the point. They get in with their really good energy use and then they get out again because they don't have the
They're
survivability to stay in for too long.
they're pretty
But then
adjacent to like Venom and Wolverine in a way, and how they function.
Venom too, yeah, that's for sure because Venom's got that that extra
He's very
health the lower you go. Yeah.
yeah, he's very divey as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Very
true.
get in, get out.
Hmm.
Very much a harasser.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, yeah. I mean, oh god, it's gonna sound like I'm a broken record. I hate
Yeah, no problem.
comparing it to Marvel Rivals, but again, the
It's
dive
just a very
comps.
good
It,
comparison.
yeah, for sure. In Marvel Rivals, the dive comp is like it's Psylocke, it's Black Panther, it's Wolverine, it's Spider Man, um,
Venom. There's also
Venom.
Hulk.
Captain America can actually be pretty good if you pair with Thor. Like
Mm,
there are ways to get around dive comps, especially if the Panther
Penny.
is going crazy. I just it just felt like the nerf was unnecessary because it was a knee-jerk nerf to how oppressive people thought Panther would be forever, instead of
Mm.
trying to work around him with a team. Very similar to the fact that they nerfed Black Panther, where Black Panther had, according to them, way too much extra health on every ability usage. So they nerfed that a little
Yeah.
bit. But even with that nerf, he still had his maneuverability. It was just the extra health that was nerfed. And I would rather keep the maneuverability of Panther and reduce the effectiveness of the 360 shield, so that he isn't just able to dive into a support or dive into a DPS or a tank and essentially be damage free outside of the was it is it called the liquid shield or the, well, I can't remember what it's called, but the
It,
Panther
I
specific 360
believe,
shield. Yeah.
I believe it was like, oh fuck. There's so many different terms. There's complex, I think there's reinforced, and I think there's fluid. I think
Yeah.
fluid shields are like the Halo-esque regenerative shields that are on all the strikers.
Yeah.
And I think the complex shield is the actual physical shield that like Panther and Elysinus have. And I
Yeah, oh, it is
believe,
complex. You are right. Yes, it's complex.
but for the actual like sort of like winged up like 360 shield, I believe that one's reinforced. I always forget the exact
I
terminology.
know there's three types. I think it's complex shield, the one where I think because it's on your right click, I believe,
Yeah,
by
complex shield's
default.
physical. Like the physical hold up shield for
Oh,
parrying.
is that the complex shield? And then the other one's
Yeah,
reinforced. Oh, I need to Google this.
yeah. At least like
Mecha
or so
break
I've been told because
shields.
I've been like
Hmm.
I'm sure we'll come up with our own abbreviations or terms for those.
For sure, yeah. But anyway, we're getting into the same territory that we got in on the last two podcasts. We want to talk about build variety and speculation and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I'm going to try and move away from what I really enjoy talking about, which is the competitive side of stuff.
yeah, absolutely.
What builds would you like to see specifically on each striker, or is there a particular striker that you think could benefit from a particular set of different equipables?
I think Lumine would benefit from having stuff that isn't lock-on reliant as an
Okay.
alternative. Because to bring up Eye of Mizra again, Lumine gets absolutely cucked in there because they have nobody to lock on to.
It's
All
true.
they have to heal their allies is the wings, and that thing is on like a 24-second cooldown, and that's very long in mecha time.
It is for sure.
So having alternatives to sort of not like fill the downside, but to swap your downsides
Hmm.
in a very slight sort of way would be interesting, but not swap it in such a way that it kills the identity of the character, like with Panther having a gun.
Yeah. I wonder. So instead of having a lock on, would you say something similar to like Jeff in
Like
Marvel Rivals, where it's not a
like an
lock on, it's
aimable
a
heal.
sustained? Yeah.
Like an aimable heal in a way. Like some of the Marvel Rivals supports, it keeps coming back.
I know. It's just, it's so relevant at the moment, and it's hard to think of
Somehow
any
Marvel
other.
Rivals returned.
Well, to be honest, I think comparisons to Marvel Rivals is fine because you
It's
can,
very apt.
yeah, you
Everyone
can
knows
look
it.
at the archetypes and stuff and say, I think it would be really good if we had an archetype like this with the build variety of X and Y or whatever. But
Mm,
yeah, like I said, I want to move away from the balance discussion because it's so easy to slip into it. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, so regarding Lumine, especially on a map like Eye of Mizora, where there's so many mountains and mounds for people to run away behind that you can't really lock onto them effectively as Lumine. What would you
Mm.
say a specific alternative that you would like would be?
Yeah, for Illuminate, just an aim and heal rather than like drones,
Hmm.
just as an alternative. I think that would give it like some variety. It would be cool if we could have one arm be the sort of aim and heal and the other be a drone. I think that sort of build variety would be interesting.
Okay. Yeah. And then obviously you'd have to balance it between the one that you have as a lock on
What would be
does
better? What would be
reduce healing,
worse?
but yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah,
really it
yeah,
really
that's a good
sucks
idea.
seeing that people weren't really satisfied with Lumine, and I get why they weren't, because it was designed by the same artist that I believe designed Weltall from Xenogears, and I love Xenogears, and I
Oh,
see
really?
it. Yeah, I believe it was I believe it was him anyway. So yeah,
Okay.
hopefully Lumine gets some help. But yeah, I would love the alternative loadouts to be more preferential based,
Hmm.
not like completely for honor if I the identity of the existing strikers in a
Yeah.
way that they're not recognizable, but rather have it be preferential but fit within the theme and the context of the striker.
Yeah. Like you were saying with regards to For Honor, not having everyone, even though I kind of think everybody needs it, like everybody has an opener, for example, that's unreactable and you have to guess.
Yeah,
Not everybody having soft feints, not everybody
that's
having
kind of
400 millisecond lights and stuff like that. Yeah.
the double-edged sword with For Honor's game design. It's like everybody needs it, but now everybody feels the same.
Yeah, it's very, very true. And then they started doing individuality checks on the specific, what they called perks, traits, the skills that you
Hmm.
could unlock when you level up. Yeah. And then it just became a bit of a mess because you had the pirate having some incredible skills that you could uh, activate on cooldown. And then compared to, say, Kensei, it was just kind of like, well, I'm outclassed here. I can't react to the
Hmm.
lights because they're 400 ms and the animation's not that clear. You've got soft feints into unblockables, and it was just, yeah, it was a nightmare. But yeah,
Yeah,
I 100% understand your fear that you could potentially
because
go
it's
too
very
far in the giving everything to everyone.
it's very difficult like ground to tread because that's just more like balance variables added, right? On
Hmm.
top of the existing base loadouts of the strikers, and that's already like up for discussion. Like a lot of people did not like Panaka. I get why. I get why. I totally get why. I agree.
Yeah.
I just hope we don't get to a point where it's like with the loadouts, it's like you never want to use this. This is garbage. Okay, you never want to use this. You only use this one. I'd rather it be like I like using the aim heal on Lumine because I don't like having to be cucked in Eye of Mizra.
Hmm. Which
And then
which would
someone else could be like, I like the drones because I don't have to aim. I don't have to keep my crosshair on them.
which on the face of it makes sense. It's just it's inevitable that a competitive game, even a PvE game like, Diablo and PoE, will have
Hmm.
meta builds because it's just mathematically what's the most viable for most situations depending on the team comp that you're in or depending on the map that you're on. But
Yeah,
that's a job for the developers. Like, do
yeah,
you just do a straight swap of stats? Just using your healing example, if you've got 100% of your heals is 100% effective and gives, like, I don't know, for argument's sake, 10 HP per second, that you've got a lock-onable healing drone, but you don't want to do that because you feel like Eye of Mizra cucks you, like you're saying. So you want just an aim and heal, which does 5%, but can be more consistent because you have full control over how you do it. Is it just like a percentage swap like that? Or is it a playstyle swap as well? That, it could go into a range of different offshoots from depending on how you want to do the build differences. But I think it's a good conversation to have because it gets people thinking about what could be and what should be and how we can make every build as viable as possible.
yeah. That's why I was kind of iffy about like alternate loadouts because it's like we already have a very good base, but like now they're gonna switch them up. I think having that sort of class variety is nice, but it's also really tough. Main takeaway is like I think we should have options,
Mm-hmm.
but those options should not change the identity of the character, and they should not. There should be a very like the dichotomy between like actual skill with the striker and the meta of the striker,
Mm.
it shouldn't be so far away. It should be all preference. It should be up to the pilot. The skill of the performance of the orbital frames is equal. It is up to the skill of the runner.
Well, yeah, that's something that's used in fighting games quite a lot as well. Well, I guess any competitive game,
Mm,
all things being equal in terms of player skill, how does one fare against the other, right? And that's
mm.
essentially what gets more complicated if you have build variety within your archetypes. So
Matchups,
yeah,
targeting, all that.
I mean, it could get pretty deep, which I'm essentially looking forward to, but I'm also dreading at the same time.
Mm.
Um, what so aside from say Lumine and Panther, which we've already covered, what other mechs or strikers? I need to keep calling them strikers because that's what they are. It's just mech is such
Mm.
a it's at the forefront of my brain.
Very,
What?
very general, very,
Yeah,
very
exactly.
useful,
What
versatile
other
term.
strikers would you like to see have build variety, and what should that build variety, in your opinion, be?
Mm. It's interesting because I think of Hurricane and Inferno, and I'm thinking about how they could potentially change with the alternative loadouts because Hurricane and Inferno are very clear in their identity that one is the defensive oriented one and one is the offensive.
Hmm.
So rather than have either or swap to the other type of role, I feel like why not just do why not just have Inferno do the offense a little bit differently? And why not just have Hurricane do its defense a bit differently?
Okay. In what
Like
ways would you have that happen?
maybe different, maybe rather than like the sort of FCS tracking like little deployable shields it has, maybe it's like one big bubble shield. I don't know if it already has that or not. I did not play much Hurricane. But
Mm.
yeah, maybe it has like one big shield rather than mess with like FCS. It's just it's like a welcome box, but people can walk through it.
Yeah, that could be interesting. I,
Yeah.
I I have less
Maybe
of an
for
opinion on
Inferno it's
Hurricane and
more
Inferno just purely because I forgot they existed on the last podcast. I
mm,
genuinely
very
did not.
underrated.
Well, that's the thing. I genuinely didn't see any standout Infernos or Hurricanes. It was just they looked really boring, and the people that played them, even when you got into like high plat and diamond and stuff,
They got
they it,
washed.
it just never impressed me. And that was probably
Yeah.
just because of players. But yeah, like I said, I have very little opinion on those. So I will defer to you.
I played a bit of Inferno. I had a friend who I think he ended up being silver at the end of the beta.
Hmm.
I out of my friend group, I played the most of the beta, so like most of the people in there were either bronze or silver. But my friend who was in silver, he played Inferno. He was pretty helpful for some of the team fights by just like kind of diagonally shooting them with the big Gundam Virtue-esque cannon,
Mm.
the hold the fire, and beaming like priority targets. I think that's really nice. The main problem with Inferno is that it cannot really catch people that are that far away because that shit has travel time, and for the big piss laser, you need like a very consistent like sort of like aim, and you need to be within like a certain range for it to be effective. Like like at least from what I've played of Inferno, that thing would not hit Narukami at its effective range.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then with Hurricane, it's like certain strikers just ignore a lot of its kit. Like it'll mess up like certain ones, but like Elysinus kind of comes in and backshots it and it's over. At least from when I would play Elysinus and I fought a Hurricane.
Aliceness backshots. Something I never thought I'd hear.
I'm telling you that rifle, if you were up close, like like really like CQC range, and you got people with the fully charged gun. It shredded the fluid armor. It was fun.
Mm.
You
Well,
just shred people.
what was weak to not plasma energy? Because that was a similar thing with Panaka, right? When Tricera came up against a Panaka, you put your mouse and keyboard down as the Tricera and just accepted your fate because you were never going to beat a Panaka that would do like 2 to 3 times the amount of damage because of the damage type that they had compared to your armor. Kind of
We
mental.
weak specifically to plasma. I forget the exact weaknesses. I just remember that Falcon defenses are paper.
Yeah, yeah.
I think certain ones had high explosive I would have to look at like my own footage again and see if I looked in the menus at all. But I forget the exact weaknesses. They'll probably become more relevant by the time the game is actually out and people are taking it more seriously and people are learning the uh, the strikers a bit more. I feel like people might be underselling certain strikers
Hmm.
a bit. I feel like we just need more time to really judge where certain strikers were at. Because at first, people thought Wolverine was pee pee poo poo dog shit in the beginning.
Yeah.
But then people started playing him as a tank shredder, and those teams that like the enemy team was Groot or something, like any tank that was very like prone to being kidnapped, they'd get shredded. Like that dude's Canadian and that dude is a tree. It's goodbye.
Yeah, I mean, like I would still say that Wolverine outside of that one specific role is very weak because like
Yeah,
it's his entire job is to take down a health bar of a tank that has a massive one. That's what his damage is calculated on. So doing it against another DPS or even a support can sometimes just mean death for the Wolverine. Um, but having a character be focused on one specific thing does not necessarily mean that that character overall is bad. Because they
yeah.
do that one thing really, really well, and as long as the player can enable that, then it works as a character, and you can clutch, you can win, you can even dominate sometimes.
Yeah, and that's what and like about like specific role versus like versatility. That's why I find strikers between like Aleseness and Panther and whatnot very interesting because Aleseness is very jack of all trades. Everybody knows this. But even though it's very like versatile in its kit, it's not perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not it's not oppressive in any specific sort of area, but it has a tool for if it needs to do a thing. It's
Yeah,
got the gun, it's got the melee, it's slow, sure. You can chase with it, sure. It's not going to be as effective at chasing because of the slow like hit rate of the spear.
mm-hmm.
Um, but it'll chase. You have the Gauss cannons. I wish they just had a little bit of health bleed through. I think that would make them very interesting. I I don't know if there's a whole lot of people that know about this tech with Aleseness, but
Mm-hmm.
if you go into the sort of melee assault boost with Aleseness, you can still fire the Gauss cannons while in that assault boost. There's
Yes,
not a whole lot of situations where that would be very like plausible to use. But I think if the Gauss cannons had a little bit of health bleed through, I think that would be make them a bit more relevant in Aleseness's kit. And then you have Panther that he's specifically melee. He is the fly swatter, big
yep.
harasser, no gun though.
Mm-hmm.
So being outrun or like just outmaneuvered, that Panther is over.
Yeah,
But that's okay because that's what matchups are. Bad
yeah,
matchups happen.
absolutely. Hmm. I think that that's kind of the problem that a lot of people had was that specifically the Panther. energy consumption thing and the recharge was that you were able to pretty effectively chase down a falcon that was in plane mode, which is of course a problem because if you're Panther and you have that level of energy consumption and energy regeneration, it feels a little bit out of place to be able to chase down a falcon. Um, so a limit on that is fine, but
Yeah.
at the cost of something else needs to be. I'm trying so carefully not to go into balanced discussions again, but the cost of reducing that as part of a build rather than as a nerf is probably something that they could lean into a bit more. So like if you want to nerf your maneuverability but have more damage, that's fine because as a Panther, the core identity is still kept that you're a medium melee. But you know, who knows what they're planning on doing with the modding system and the equipment system. Speaking of actually, in terms of build varieties and modding,
Yeah.
what did you think of the modding system?
I'm very iffy on it. I honestly
Yeah.
hope that it's specific to the Mashmak mode specifically. I don't want that shit in my PvP mode. I feel like it doesn't really need to be there because then again, there'll just be more people coming in. There's gonna be these brain rot content creators that are just gonna be like, best mods on Panther, go all in on the low energy consumption on the assault boost.
Yeah, it's
You wanna
inevitable.
reduce your melee delay.
I mean,
It's
I'm kind of in full agreement. I don't like the mod system. Um, and the way that I kind of want them to do the Mashmak and its customization is very similar to how they do Hunt Showdown. I don't know if you've ever played Hunt
I
at
didn't
all.
play it. I like the one game I've played that I believe had a PvE mode was I think Division 2 had something like that. I didn't
Mm,
play that mode too often, but I believe it had something like that.
yeah, Division
I'd
has
I'd
the
rather the
Dark Zone.
PV. Yeah, I believe I personally think that the Mashmak mode should be the should be like the no limits mode where the mods are allowed. You get the mods, you use the mods there. All the limiters are off. Go Trans Am, go crazy. And then
Mm,
for the actual like the actual modes, like the 3v3, the 6v6, the like the ranked stuff, all that. That shit's got to go. Nope,
mm.
I don't want it there.
I
Because
am in
again,
full agreement with you on that, to be honest, because the conversation I had with Amy last episode was essentially that mechs and mech games are heavily influenced by the ability to customize, and taking it away from some modes and only putting them in others takes away from the core of the game. But I feel like
mm,
in order to make a competitive environment outside of quick match or whatever, taking it out of your standard 3v3 and 6v6 is healthier for the game, and then allowing the customization only in Mashback where you can go as balls to the wall as you possibly could do after the things that you've unlocked. I will say though, I still think there should be limits on stuff in Mashmac because being able to mod stuff to make your striker be the meta version of that striker would be a little bit too frustrating to deal with every time. So the ability to only swap out weapons and maybe a few like consumables and stuff would make a bit more sense, which is 100% along with like maybe some mods and stuff, which is how Hunt Showdown does PvPvE, and I fucking love that game. Um,
mm,
but yeah, that's kind of my takeaway from it.
yeah. For me again, I think it should like purely when it comes to striker v striker, it should. I totally believe it should just be like up to the skill of the pilot. I don't like no like what tuning did you have on your vehicle? Because I think what Mecha Break really is excels at in particular is rather than being about like a mech game about its customization, it's more about the specifics of the individual mechas and their roles in a team. And I feel like they should lean more into the piloting capabilities of those particular strikers, because that can make some people really stand out in like the competitive scene. Like people stand out playing like Spider-Man and all that in like Marvel Rivals, to
Hmm.
bring that up again. Uh, like it like you have like a very high skill ceiling, like say like maybe a Panther or something, or like an Aleseness, and it's like if you just take away that modding system, like as an aspect, take it away from like the main standard modes, people really appreciate their skill level at that place. They won't like have that backroomed thought where it's like, okay, well this guy's good, but like he's using the meta modding setup, modding
Mm.
tuning.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But like if you take that away, it's like, damn, this Aleseness is pretty fucking good. I think that just makes for like a healthier environment in terms of like the more competitive scene, because then it allows the pilots to be more focused on like in regards to their chosen striker
Yeah.
rather than the modding system, which you have to play a very specific mode to get, which you
Yeah.
have to play with like two other people and kill other people potentially, and AI to get. Not
Well,
that I think
yeah.
Mashmak will be bad or anything. I think it's interesting to have a PvE mode, but I don't think it should affect the standard modes too much. I think it should
Yeah.
just be a thing you go into on its own. It shouldn't be like Warzone where it affects like I'm talking like Halo 5 Warzone with like the rec system.
Okay. Right.
In that sort of way, it's like a little bit of a different context, but it's like the loot boxes gave you like the certain rec packs you could bring into Warzone. I don't like that.
Interesting.
Sure,
Okay.
it's only for Warzone, but like
Well, yeah, the main point of that particular discussion, I think, is should you be able to have an advantage in the quote unquote
standard.
more competitive modes, 3v3, 6v6, payload, all that stuff,
Hmm.
by doing a different mode entirely that has a completely different set of variables? I
Yeah,
think that answer is no, but there are
absolutely.
some people who think the answer is yes because of the whole mech aesthetic and ethos. But that's again another conversation that we can all have. Um, I just personally hope that they keep the standard competitive modes with the vanilla builds, and then Mashmak you can do mostly whatever the hell you want with the equipable weapons and mods and stuff.
Yeah, just to top that off, just so we can like move on to like maybe
Mm-hmm.
modes and maps. Um, just to top that off, I think Mecha Break is different from like say an Armored Core game where it's like you can see the physical change in like the parts you choose for the most part
Mm-hmm.
with Armored Core. That's why it's okay. Oh, hey, the campaign stuff you get can affect the PvP, because it's like there's at least some sort of physical change you can see. With Mecha Break, I feel like we can ditch that mod system just to reinforce that point further. We can ditch that mod system because it's very numbers. It's very much in the background.
Mm-hmm.
The focus
Yeah.
should be on the the mech, the actual physical mech, rather than something so in the background that people aren't going to pay as much attention to anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with
It just leads to more frustration in the end, because then it's like, hey, I'm playing Panaka. You're not using the right mods on Panaka. What are you doing?
that. I mean, yeah, that's a danger when you put too much customization in the hands of players. I mean, it
Mhm.
happens even when you don't have any customization. Like every hero shooter, um, or shooter in general. Oh, you're not using this gun in Call of Duty and this setup, or you're not using this hero in Marvel Rivals. Spider Man's really bad. Like you have to be amazing with him. It's like he can still do well. Like, you don't know how good this person is, but you will always have this
Mm.
preconceived notion that because this person isn't picking the straight up meta thing, that it's going to be worse for you. And I fucking
Yeah.
hate that, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd rather the meta discussion just stick to the actual mechs themselves and just screw that mod system unless it's for like Mashmak in particular.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
think
for
we
sure.
should I think this is a good point to talk about like maps and modes because
Hmm.
that I feel like that's really lacking right now in Mecha Break right now. That I feel like there could be more variety added to that.
Yeah, I agree. Hit me. Like, these are your points, so I'm just here to facilitate it for you.
Yep. I'm just trying to think of what type of modes they could add. They already have in like a team deathmatch sort of mode, right? I believe they had something like that. I feel like before adding new like modes in general for like the standard,
Hmm.
I feel like we need more maps because the problem with like the game modes is that they each have like one map,
Yeah,
and
that's
that
true.
that can get stale. That can get stale real quick.
Hmm.
So we need more of the Stratum Shatterer mode on other maps. We need more of the upload key mode on other maps. Please, for the love of God, don't let me play only Eye of Mizra. Goodness gracious.
It does
Give me
get
another
quite
map to play
boring.
that mode on.
Hmm.
Oh my God.
So
Um,
in terms of map
yeah.
and mode correlation, let's take payload for example, because it's the one that everyone is familiar with, whether you play a hero shooter or a mech shooter or whatever. It's a really good standard. What would you
Hmm.
change in terms of a payload map to make it distinct enough that it isn't just a different skin, but it has some interesting quirks? Would it be like elevations? Would it be like destructibility stuff? What would you add?
I think just like changing the amount of cover, or just like elevation, like you said, like stuff like that in general. Because the payload map we have in the game is pretty interesting in its own right, where it's not the typical a attacker and defender sort of one-sided sort of brawl.
Mm,
It's rather get point A to point B first. And I think that's pretty interesting and it works within the environment of the game. I feel like they could have more maps to sort of contribute to the variety of that, where, certain variables are, adjusted certain environments. Maybe some sort of like what do you call them? Colony sort of map. I don't know if
yeah.
I don't know if we have colonies established in Mecha Break lore or not, but I think that'd be like an interesting setting to work with.
You talked about the deathmatch map, which has got like the three platforms.
I is that a colony?
I'm not
I
sure.
wish I paid more attention to the maps. I would love to just like look up and see essentially the floor because it's like
I see
cylindrical,
what you mean. Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
like, like the Gundam colonies.
Right. Yep. I get you. I get you.
Like I would because the thing with mecha as like a genre is that it's very versatile in like what you can do with your setting and what you can do with like gameplay. That's why I feel like it being a niche is very very unfortunate because there's so much that can be brought with it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think just uh having more maps for, the existing modes rather than just having the individual modes just have one map for each. I think that would really help it in the long run and help keep the game like flourishing and not feeling stale in the long run.
Yeah, I think maps are one of the biggest underrated things that developers acknowledge. Is that even a sentence? Basically,
Mhm.
devs seem to not want to produce new maps as often as we would like them to, because they're either worried that they're going to be completely shat on, or they're not going to be good enough, or they're going to be buggy. And I would probably assume it's much easier to work on like an individual striker because you're just contained to that model. But if you've got things in an environment that clip, you could get stuck on. If you've got events like on Eye of Mizora, how do you balance that between the objective itself? I hope we get varying maps for different game modes, but who knows? I mean, do we know if we're going to be starting with a season 0 or is it going to be season 1 when it drops? Because I think that's a good distinction to have.
I'm actually not sure. I think in regards to maps again, um, I think Mecha Break would really benefit from again taking notes from Marvel Rivals, where the you can essentially change the map with like the destructible environments. Of course, it's like controlled destructible environment,
Mm,
but like I think just having that sort of like interactability, like whether it be like in a destructible sense or in like more of a Halo sense where you press like a button and a gate opens or something, I think that can really spice up some of the maps.
yeah.
Just giving just giving players more agency with the like with maps, both like as of right now and then for like the future.
Well, the reason I was asking about if we have a season 0 or a season 1, because I think it might actually be beneficial to have a season 0 first, get everybody playing the game, have the season be for I don't know just a singular month, and then slowly release information about the roadmap once season 1 drops. So
Yeah,
season 0 is just here are the systems, here is the game, and then
get
on
acquainted.
Twitter and YouTube, yeah, exactly, and then on third-party websites and in-game announcements, it's once season 1 drops, here's a new map and a new striker, and then in the middle of season 1, here's a new game mode or something like that. Just get everybody, like you say, acquainted with the game first and its systems, because there's probably going to be a lot of them and then in the season 0, you can kind of write off your ranked experience as just everyone's learning, and you can essentially use it as a testing period to see what people like about your game when it's essentially the base game. And then
Yeah,
adding maps and game modes and stuff like that can come after. So I think it would be beneficial to do that, but we actually don't know what's happening. So yeah.
yeah. I think a season 0 would be good for like new players like just hopping on at launch as well, because then like people are gonna come into Mecha Break probably having never played a mecha game in their lives. My friends that hopped on it, like damn near never played a mecha game in their lives, so they're unfamiliar with like the traditional boosting sort of movement that is involved with those sort of games. So they have to get to grips with that. I think having a season 0 would really be a good time period for having those that initial burst of players get acquainted with mecha breaks like baseline systems that are taken from the mecha genre in general,
Mm-hmm.
as well as the more specific systems in regards to the strikers, how they function, their roles, the matchups, and all that. I think that would be really, really nice. And that means for that month they won't have to potentially let's hope they won't have to worry about balance because the
Mm-hmm.
worst thing about a game sometimes is if a dev does a knee-jerk balance adjustment and it
Yeah.
ends up like completely like you're like giving like a striker in particular either the Infinity Gauntlet or like a chunk of mud.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
So then, kind of moving on from maps specifically, what new modes would you like to see in Mecha Break?
New modes is tough. Like I know I brought like new modes into like discussion. Um, I think we should have like co-op or some sort of PvE. Obviously not like right away, but
Hmm.
I think they should eventually get into that sort of thing and maybe have like sort of like advertising like for it, put out some lore and stuff. Because like
Mm,
people can get invested in stories like no matter like what's on the cover. I think Nikkei is a very good example of that. On the very baseline, it's very Booba Gunner game. But
hmm.
like you go into it and they hit you with like depression, like the first chapter.
Okay.
So I think having
We
story
talking about
content,
Stellar Blade's developer's first game? You talk about that one?
I think they made a game before Nikkei as well.
Oh, did
I
they?
forget. Just like I think it's like a bit less well known. I forget the name of it, but yeah, that's their other game. But
Okay.
yeah, like I've been
Yeah.
playing through Nikkei. It's got a pretty good story despite the the funny character designs. Um, but yeah, like people can get like invested in a story if you like really like push for that. Obviously, if they have the resources to do that, then like they totally should. If they don't, then they can lay it back a bit. But I think if the game gets big enough, I think the game will pop off because considering the genre and how not only is it a combination of the mecha genre, which is niche, but
Mm.
also the hero shooter genre, which is oversaturated. So it's got these two things stacked against it. It having what was it like? Let me check Steam DB for a bit. Steam DB Mecha Break Art. It had roughly, just give me a minute. All-time peak was 47,000 players for the mecha genre being in a hero shooter genre
Mm.
sort of set. I think 50,000 for a arguably pretty short open beta is a really good tell of how good it's gonna pop off.
Yeah, I agree. But that was just
I
on
think
Steam,
that's
right?
like really good. Yeah, this was on Steam DB. I
Yeah.
just checked. That was the open beta in August,
Yeah. So I mean, it's also going to be on
and like a bunch
PlayStation
of
and
people
Xbox.
wish
So
PlayStation seems iffy. It seems like they're moving away from like advertising it on PlayStation. I don't know what's up with that. We haven't really gotten any like feedback on that. They haven't really been saying much.
well,
I would hope PlayStation gets the game, especially at the same time as everyone else does.
I I I don't want to be
But
too cynical, but I have a feeling because the recent closed beta test is for Xbox and PC. I think it's because the Xbox version has to compete with itself in terms of the S and the X. And we've had devs come out over the last few months,
mm,
even 6 months, saying that the Series S is an issue to develop for. And if they want parity between X and
yeah,
S, they're going to have to do a lot of work for it. So my hopium is that the PS5 and the PS5 Pro versions are ready to go, and they're just testing between Xbox Series S, X, and PC to make sure if there is crossplay compatibility, that there isn't any obstacles in terms of development and performance. That's kind of what I'm hoping it is, and not that they're just forgetting PlayStation exists. Because to be honest,
mm,
this being a Chinese mecha game, Xbox players are the least likely to play this type of game. It will mostly be
yeah,
PlayStation players, considering, the Eastern
PlayStation or
Asian
PC. Yeah,
influence. That Yeah, exactly. If we're talking just consoles, though, it will be PlayStation, and PlayStation players will be the most inclined to play this type of game. But with it being mecha and mecha being relatively popular in the West now, especially with Gundam and Eva and all these other fucking franchises, Armored Core, for example, really
mm,
pushing the genre, you would hope that it just boosts numbers from every platform.
yeah. And I speaking of crossplay, I think we don't have much worry on like the sort of dichotomy between controller and mouse and keyboard because like the aim isn't as much important unless you're on like a sniper, like zoomed in, I guess. Um, as much as positioning and movement is important. And I think that's a really good thing as well. So I don't think I think crossplay will be like a lot more of a benefit because people in other games tend to really complain about crossplay and having for like a toggle. But I think we'll be pretty good
Yeah.
on crossplay for Mecha Break in particular. Because like the sort of oh, but you can move your wrist for the mouse, or and then it's like, oh, you have aim assist. Sort of discussion is kind of like dead in the water for most jobs. Obviously, one control scheme would have like more of an advantage in certain fields than others, but that the divide between them is a bit lessened with Mecha Break because of its systems, I feel. So I think crossplay is pretty good. Just to get that off topic thing out of the way, I thought it was interesting to bring up.
No, for sure. I mean, the biggest franchise that has players complain about crossplay is Call of Duty, if I'm not mistaken, just because the
Mm.
anti-cheat systems on all of the platforms is apparently terrible. So you'll go into a Warzone game with crossplay enabled, and you'll get PC players, teleporting around, headshotting you from an entire map away. PlayStation and Xbox players having what is that thing called? Is it a Zim? There's like a little device that you
Mm.
can plug in, and it like helps you cheat and shit
For
like that.
yeah,
Yeah, so it's rife in that way, but hopefully their moderation system is really really good, and they can pick up on cheats pretty quickly, as well as people just being complete dickheads online. You just suspend them for 6 hours, and if you do it again, spend them for a day, and ramp it up so they stop being assholes.
speaking of heaters, I wonder how that would even like work in Mecha Break. Maybe just like stat tuning, but even then, I feel like that'd be pretty easy to shut down. Because like a lot of the cheaters in like other games, it's pretty like it's pretty much just like aimbot for the most part, right? So,
Yeah, 90%.
but like in Mecha Break, what good is aimbot if your positioning sucks
True.
and your game sense sucks? It's not as reliant on that. So if they do the Marvel Rivals approach where they immediately lock down on the on banning cheaters, like because
Mm,
Marvel Rivals is really good with banning cheaters right now, I think, and even
it is, yeah.
just like poor sportsmanship in general. Um, I think like Mecha Break because of its systems will also kind of adjacently lock down on cheaters because what are they gonna aimbot with? Like, they're gonna use an Arukami and Aquila. Okay, dodge this lance.
I mean,
Not
it
gonna
might be
sugarcoat it.
less to do with aimbots and more to do with wall hacking,
Hmm,
seeing through walls, seeing through
that might be
narrows and
important. That would be
invisibility
important.
stuff. Yeah, not being affected by CC probably be a big thing as well. Um, but yeah, it'll have its challenges like any online game does. It's just whether or not Amazing Season does a good enough job shutting it down so that
Hmm,
90% of the time you can have an experience where you don't encounter a cheater.
yeah, I feel like for those kind of cheats, I think if we have a sort of theater system like Halo and again more Marvels has, I
Mm,
think that'll be a good way to catch like cheaters with those more apparent sort of cheats. Because with like aimbot, you gotta like really look, but with like all these other cheats, it's very easy to spot, right? So I
excuse me.
think
Yeah.
if we have a like a a functional, not bad theater mode sort of thing, not only would it make recording games like retroactively easier, it also would catch the very obvious cheaters as well, and then we can report them.
Yeah, for sure. Anything that makes it easier to spot a cheater or a harasser is a win in my book. With was it Siege and
Absolutely.
For Honor implemented that kind of stuff for reporting people in game immediately. It's like go on the scoreboard, report, done. If they've
Mm.
done nothing wrong, then they don't get banned or whatever. But if the system or the moderators, community managers deem that you've broken a rule, then you're out of there.
Yeah, I know you and Amy brought up the free to play versus initial price point aspect and how that contributes to um the population of cheaters because they're ultimately I believe Mecha Break is supposed to be free to play. I think it
It
would
is going to be,
benefit. I think it benefits more from being free to play because that means people who aren't crazy into Mecha get to just jump in.
yeah,
Does this make the monetization aspect a bit more egregious? Yes. I hope it's not crazy egregious. Like again, Halo Infinite's shops. I Why are we not able to buy things individually, bro? I just want the Anubis helmet, man.
That's what I said. I literally said the same thing on the last episode where I can understand packs being expensive because they're aesthetics for an entire like a build, for example. But why can't I just like why isn't the option available to buy a specific weapon skin or a helmet skin or a chest piece skin? And I hope that's what they do in Mecha Break because the ability to customize all this kind of shit would be even more exciting if I was able to do that.
Yeah, you just like look at like the bundles are basically a catalog and you can pick and choose. That would be really nice. Marvel
Yeah.
Rivals, it's not like perfect. I think prices are crazy, but like at least you can buy the skin on its own if
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to mess with like the MVP animations and whatever. I think you should still be able to buy the other individual items in those bundles, like the MVP animation. Well, you would need the skin anyway, right? That's how a lot of them work. Um,
Yeah.
and like stuff like the sprays and the emotes and whatnot, right? But like just being able to just buy the skin on its own, and I believe it discounts after you buy the skin. I think it's nice too. But I
Yeah.
would just love it if we could just buy the individual stuff, just like just like that. None of this stupid. Hey, you want this really cool looking helmet? This really cool Anubis helmet? You gotta pay for all this other shit you don't want. It, oh, what is this? 800 credits for just some shoulders you want because we decided to shove 12 of the same emblem in there. Fuck you.
Yeah,
Pay
it's
up.
it's a shit system, honestly.
Bad.
Bad, bad, bad.
At least with like Helldivers, like even though like the rotating shop isn't like perfect or anything, I think they're gonna change that at some point. I hope they do. At least you can buy just the helmet or just the body armor
Yeah.
or
Well,
just the nameplate
the extra thing that
as long as they're
Helldivers
not like
does really
full
well,
buttons.
yeah, that Halo Infinite apparently does, is battle passes don't expire. And Marvel Rivals ones don't expire if you buy like the luxury premium one, which I think is a fair trade off considering the game is free to play. But yeah, that's what I hope they do with Mecha Break as well. So, all of these consumer friendly practices, I hope they take on board because all it will do is encourage more people to engage with the game. Because if you just want to buy one piece a month, like an extreme example, if you just want to buy a piece of a set a month because that's all your income will allow you to do, then that should be available to you. It doesn't take away from your ultimate goal, but it could take away from the amount of fun that you have if you're not able to look aesthetically pleasing to yourself while you're in the game. So,
Mm.
yeah.
Speaking of which, they had the whole battle pass sort of testing system in the open beta where Inferno
Yeah.
was in there. I really hope, for the love of God, don't put strikers in the battle pass. Let us just get that shit, please. Please,
Yeah.
God, please. I don't I don't want Inferno to be picked even less just because it's not in a stupid battle pass.
I think they could go the Marvel Rivals route for sure, where the characters are free and they will be forever free. As long as people are buying cosmetics, buying what's the MVP screens and the SVP screens
Yeah.
and stuff like that. As long as you can just buy things to make your experience more pleasing to yourself, just aesthetics as well, no gameplay altering stuff, then characters slash strikers should be free because
Yeah.
overall everybody's or a lot of people, majority of people will be paying more than they would be if they're just buying characters. So I think that's
Yeah.
reasonable.
And on the monetization aspect, I feel like they should have the monetization lean away from the mechas, the strikers, because we love putting our colors on our mechs in
Mm-hmm.
mecha related content. I love painting my ACs in every Armored Core game I've played. I feel like kind of removing that agency through a paywall really sucks. I feel like they can move away from that a bit
Mm-hmm.
and make it to where the more monetized aspects are potentially the pilots with like accessories and whatnot and MVP screens because we do have MVP screens, but it's only like the set one for
Yeah.
the strikers. I think adding more of those could add to the monetization. Um, there's also maybe like decal patterns or something as well. Like that, I think that can be monetized just as long as we can like pretty freely change our colors. I think we could be satisfied with that as long as we get a few, little bits of like that kind of more premium stuff like MVP
Mhm.
and like decal stuff. I think we'd be like pretty satisfied as long as we get like that variety of colors, and they should not be locked behind specific strikers. Ooh, that's so dumb. I hated that. I wanted to color certain strikers a certain way, and I
Mhm.
couldn't because they didn't have a specific shade of a specific quality of a specific sort of gloss that I wanted. And it's like
Yeah. Yeah,
hurts.
yeah. I'm pretty much on the same page with that. You know, make all the paint jobs um free, like include them with the mech, and
Or
give
make them
every
easy to
single
unlock
mech.
at least.
I mean, yeah, like well, don't make it a paywall, as it were. Like, don't make it locked behind a paid loot box, for example. But also at the same time,
Yeah,
make all of the colors the same for every mech. Like, I understand that you want some individuality by limitation, but I
mm.
honestly think there's no point to that limitation. It seems just limiting them for the sake of it. Just allow
I think
every
the
striker to have all
silhouettes
the
are
paints
enough.
on it.
I think the silhouettes are already enough, like differentiation, and people have
Mm,
already made like their own like unique sort of color sets. It only broadens that customization if we just remove the limitations of what colors can stick to certain
yeah,
strikers.
that's 100% true. I agree with that.
Mm.
Right. Anything
Maybe,
else that you would like
maybe.
to talk about?
Let's see. Hmm.
Because I know you
Let me
have
just.
like you have stuff to do later today. I don't want to keep you too long.
Yeah. Let me just think. Let's see. So we went over balance that went up time and time again. We went over maps and went over potential modes. Talked about strikers. What do you think about them adding different sort of molds to the strikers? Like as like that could probably be another like monetizable aspect. Like change Panther's head maybe, or change the arms, like just the physical look of it. It won't change the silhouette too crazy, but
I see what you
it'll
mean.
be just a it'll be just a slight difference to make it maybe look the way people maybe want it to, right? Kind
Hmm.
of like a skin in a way, or if like kind of like customizing a Spartan, like to bring that up. Like, oh, maybe I want to make Panther's head look a little bit different or something like that, right?
Yeah, I
Keep
think
it
that's
obviously
probably
keep it within the
fine.
theme of the company.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I honestly think that's fine. Like you were saying, don't move too far away from the original design. Maybe round some edges or adds, an extra spike here and there or something like that. But as long as your silhouette is recognizable enough, then that's
Hmm.
fine. It was kind of like For Honor in a way where you could customize all of your pieces, but as soon as you came into contact with another hero, it was immediately obvious who that hero was, regardless of what they were wearing. So,
Yeah,
if they can do that, strike a pretty nice balance between being able to customize, but not too hard that the opponent doesn't know what they're fighting, I think that's fine. Yeah. And more things you could monetize as well.
yeah, I agree. And I think it'd make for some pretty nice screenshots in like the whole fashion corner and all that, because
Hmm.
we love our mech fashion, right?
Who
Uh,
doesn't?
so long as it's not too egregious again, they have to strike that fine balance. They can't keep prices as low because obviously they're not like an established IP, but still shouldn't be too egregious. If the game's big enough, it'll passively make income, allow them to do more things and whatnot. So yeah, I think the game will be successful just based off how high the number of players there were in the OBT, and then how many
Hmm.
people are wishlisting it. I think it was like 500,000 wishlisting it. I could be wrong. Um,
So there's a pre-registered number on the website. I don't know if that takes into account Steam wish lists.
I
Pre-registered
think
441,657, and that would just
okay,
be
so
for
yeah, that's like
PC. I'm
almost
guessing.
500.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's like a really good amount of people. Again, with the genres in mind.
Hmm. I
Obviously,
think.
it'd have to like contend with like Marvel rivals, but it would serve its own niche that I think people would come back to it because Armored Core came and left.
Unfortunately,
It
yeah.
came in, it launched with a bang. It put out some patches. We thought it would maybe return after Shadow of the Erd Tree and all that, but it didn't. We waited for Night Rain. We thought, oh hey, maybe that's the expansion for AC. Nope, Elden Ring somehow. Elden
Well,
Ring returned.
every Souls game, like all the Souls bosses, and I mean, yeah, I don't think there's any
Nameless King,
Sekiro stuff, but yeah, the nameless king on the dragon in Limgrave
straight
is
up Nameless King.
fucking mental.
I I, I find that so funny.
I know it
But
is really funny.
yeah, it'll fill the. I think Mecha Break will fill that hole. And even if another Armored Core comes out, people will eventually come back to Mecha Break because again, free to play, more multiplayer oriented,
Hmm.
just like longer lasting compared to the more single player, like specific, like filling of Armored Core.
Yeah, I think just
But yeah,
on one last thing, just to wrap it up nicely, where we were going with this conversation. Um, I think 441,000 players, presumably just on PC that have pre-registered alone, is really good. But it's about how you retain those players. And I think a major
mm,
thing that can retain players while introducing some new ones here and there is collaborations. And I really want them to lean into collabs because the more exposure that a fan of Mecha gets to a franchise means that you can then integrate that fan into yours. So imagine having Gundam Wing skins or even just straight up strikers that is Gundam Wing would be really cool and will bring in at least some people that maybe didn't know this game exists, or Eva, or Promare, the film. Like, who
mm.
knows? The possibilities are endless, but that's something that I really want them to lean into because it could be really cool.
I I have a different approach to this. I don't think it should be. I think collabs can be good
Mm-hmm.
as long as they approach it a certain way. I don't think it should just be blatant where it's just like, oh hey, it's Panther, but it's straight up Double O Gundam. I think it should be more of the Halo 3 approach where they had Ryu Hayabusa in Halo 3 as an armor set, but it was tuned to fit the art style of Halo 3. I
Mm,
think that's a really good approach that needs to be like repeated more. That needs to be looked at more. I think that's a very underrated approach with collabs because I hate the way COD does their collabs because it's just like stick the thing in there and it just
yeah.
sticks out like a sore thumb. I hate seeing just straight up Nicki Minaj shooting like Gundam aerial. I think that shit looks stupid.
Hmm.
But if it's like oh hey, but it's Ryu Hayabusa as a Spartan, or it's like oh it's Double O Gundam, but like in the style of Panther. I think that's a really good approach to how they would do collabs. And I hope that's what they do if they ever do collabs.
Yeah. I'm going the more like fighting game route where you just have a straight up crossover where a developer, excuse me, gets the
Mm,
license to create a character from a different IP. Like Tekken 8 has Clive from FF16 for like that's crazy, and he's
mm,
integrated really well. I think in the beginning you can be quite rightly skeptical because he looks a bit out of place, but then you start playing the game and he fits right in. Just because the
mm,
way that the developers have integrated the character design, the move set, it just fits. And I think the ultimate crossover would be to put Gundam suits, Eva suits, etc., in the actual game of Mecha Break. And that would be a really big draw for people that want to experience their favorite characters from different Gundam animes or whatever
Mm.
into a game setting that actually feels like it should have Gundams in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like the reason though, for me, I feel like the reason those fighting game crossovers work is because they like with Clive or say like Noctis in Tekken 7.
Mm-hmm.
It's like yeah, it's like a mostly like martial arts based like sort of fighting game, but there's at least like fantasy elements in there. So the fantasy characters in there don't look as out of place, and there's also sci-fi elements in Tekken. So if
Mm-hmm.
they in the event that they add a sci-fi crossover, it won't be out of place either. So I think that's why those kind of crossovers work in the context of Tekken. But with Mecha Break, if it just is like straight up here's the mecha, not in the style of the existing mechas that are established by the companies that exist within the universe. I feel like that might I feel like that might mess with the identity of the visual language of the strikers that exist.
I definitely understand what you're saying in terms of you want it to be a coherent not
It should
just
be
lore, but a
coherent. Yeah.
coherent art style as well and a design
Yeah,
philosophy. Yeah, no, I can
that's why I'm very
100% appreciate
for
that.
that's why I'm very for like Halo 3 Hayabusa because it's Ryu Hayabusa, but as a Spartan armor. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think that should be the norm for like these sort of crossovers that could potentially clash with the art style of the game. Having a Halo Spartan in DOA, it's silly, right? But that's because DOA is silly, so it makes sense in the context of that. But Halo is a bit like it's goofy, right? But
Hmm.
it's also like its own like bit of seriousness too. So that's why they went with that approach. I think it's all about context, right?
Yeah.
So I think if they just approach it nicely, it would work.
Yeah, that's down to the story writers and the agreement between the companies. Like, how do you want us to introduce this suit into our world, and coming to an agreement in what would make the most sense while also engaging the most amount of audience members. You know, as long as they
Yeah.
do that, it should be fine. If they decide to just straight up crossover.
Yeah, and they'll retain their players either way as long as the, you know, the shop isn't straight ass and they, you know, listen to, you know, make the correct balance adjustments and whatnot, and they add in content at like like reasonable time frames.
Yeah.
It's a fine balance of everything all at once, and we'll just have to see what happens from there. There's a chance maybe with like, you know, with it being a bit of a not as established studio, it'll probably be a good while before we get any updates when the game actually launches. But hey, if
Yeah.
the game is like actually successful, which it likely will be, considering all the previous like parameters, I think they could really skyrocket themselves into just kind of making the game better for not only themselves but for everyone playing it as well. So
I
yeah,
wholeheartedly agree.
yeah, I think that's it for me. I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head.
Lovely. Well, that will be the end of the Moonbow Network episode 3. I just want to say a huge thank you to Azrael because the reason he's on the show right now was because my previous guest fell through and I panic asked yesterday night in the Discord and was like, anybody want to come on a podcast? And thankfully, Azrael said yes, stepped up to the plate. So I hugely appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm pretty much a nobody right now, but hey, maybe I'll make a name for myself and make a break when I upload stuff eventually. But yeah, I'm really liking the make a break discussion going on right now. I really like the community. They don't seem as annoying as other communities I've been a part of. And yeah, I'm just really excited for Mecha Break to come out and hope to see a bunch of people in there when I get into matches. I would love to be able to recognize names in the matches that I play,
Hmm.
especially in a mech sort of game like that. I think that's that kind of correlates with like the whole pilot name and whatnot. I think that's interesting. But yeah,
Yeah, that
hope
would be
to
really, really
hope
cool.
to see y'all when Mecha Break comes out. Hopefully beta. Hopefully an open beta again. That'd be great. But if not, then launch.
I have my fingers crossed for an open beta as well. But yes, that will
Hmm.
be the end of the Moonbow Network episode 3. Thank you ever so much for everybody who joined in the chat and who was asking stuff and interacting with us. I will be back next week with either something about lore or another kind of opinion discussion type of thing. I still need to confirm. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Take care, stay safe. Thank you to Azreal. And finally, if you want, I'm going to be playing some Ninja Gaiden Black 2. Big thanks to Koei Tecmo for sending me a review code. So if you want to watch me fail at that, I'll be back in about 10 minutes. I'll keep the stream running. But yes, thank you very much. Take care, stay safe, and bye bye.
Yep. Thank you for having me. See y'all.